I mean, you got to hear about that guy, whether you love him or hate him,
And they're
all
the
day,
ones.
every day, right? I mean, he shouldn't have to invade your books or your television shows or your,
See,
you know.
they are the one. They were the ones that were pushing the idea of Trump as president before anybody
Well,
on a
that's
show,
true.
an
Yeah,
episode like what 10 or 20 years ago as a
right,
joke. So I mean, it's just
right.
I cannot see this gentleman backstage at all. Okay, explain to him, Zach.
Is
Okay,
is he using Chrome? Because I mean, he needs to use Chrome. He can't use like Edge.
I'm not using Chrome.
I mean, well, what are you using? Internet Explorer.
No, Lord, no. I
Oh, okay.
wanted it to work.
Well, right. I mean, I know that Edge doesn't work. I'm assuming that Internet Explorer probably doesn't either. But
I use Brave browser,
okay,
and
yeah, I've never been able to get that to work on a machine, but
yeah,
uh, I haven't tried on this machine. So to be honest, so
it's great. It blocks so many ads and malware automatically. It is
right.
great. I never have to watch a single commercial on YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Huh. Well, I'm gonna have to give it another whirl. On my old box, I tried to get it installed a couple different times and it never worked. But I'll try it
That's
on this
weird.
one.
How could
Yeah.
I get it to work and you couldn't?
Well, I mean, I didn't try exceedingly hard either, right? I mean, like it just didn't work. I tried a couple times, didn't work. I didn't mess with it, right? I mean, because I had browsers that worked,
Hello.
Chrome, but
Oh,
All right. Ronald Kelly's joins fellow Tennessean. Now Gregor's the odd man out here.
oh yeah, as far as
three
not being a
Tennesseans in
Tennessean,
one
yeah,
stream.
So, the author of Timber Gray, the short story collection, The Halloween Store, Undertaker's Moon about werewolves. You've written at least one vampire novel. Now, I mean, I was just exposed to your work in the last few weeks,
Mhm.
and so the first one that I read was Timber Gray, which is amazing. I mean, the guy isn't superhuman, but he has a reputation that lends the idea that he might be, but he's very fallible, and that's what makes it even more awesome when he kills these wolves. But
Mhm.
by the dozen. I love that book. Undertaker's Moon, I'm a little bit into that, and of course, just bought the Halloween Store for the seasonal reasons. And so, how long have you been writing? Why am I just now hearing your name and about all these books?
I have no idea. I've been writing for like 30 plus years. I mean,
Yeah, and he's also a legit zebra horror author from
That's
Tennessee,
right.
which I find pretty amazing. Because
That's right.
zebra, if I would have known that I'd be talking to one from Tennessee later on when I was in high school getting into zebra. It's pretty dang cool. Just right around the corner.
I mean, it's amazing to me, and this is, I guess we're not really talking about the author here, but it's amazing to me that you loved zebra anyways, considering your age. Like you're just like going back in time. I mean, all those books came out before you were even born, right?
Oh yeah,
Zach? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
sure.
amazing that you were collecting those books. That seems crazy to me.
Well, yeah,
You think
but
that's a
it's
bit
because
strange, Mr. Kelly? Don't you think that's a bit odd that a guy that's 21 years old in
22.
high school,
yeah.
22, was collecting all these zebra books? Isn't that a bit strange?
Well, lately a lot of people are collecting zebra books. I mean, um, Grady Hendrix put out that book, Paperbacks from Hell, and it just everybody, they love the art. They started reading the books. They love the books, and started collecting them. It just blows me away that people are starting to really gravitate to zebra books and some of the old mass market paperbacks and collecting them like that. And they're paying some really high prices for them too.
Right.
I get
Well, I
to
mean,
say I was
but it's like
into them before Grady
you have a
Hendrix.
nostalgia for an age you never lived in, right? So what were you going to say, Zach? I'm sorry.
I was going to say I was into them before Grady Hendrix. No, but I mean, it's back into that idea of, I guess you could say, retro futurism. We don't like modernity, and so we go backwards.
I get you. Yeah, yeah.
The 80s was a simpler time that I never lived in.
So Mr. Kelly, what is going on with this Timber Gray book? Is this a departure? What's the inspiration for that? Because it seems like generally I've thought of you as being like a horror writer, but that doesn't seem like a horror book based on what Jeremy has told us about it. So, what's the inspiration for that?
Well, it's just a traditional Western novel. It's not. It doesn't have any horror thing or anything like that. I mean, I could have very well made it into a horror
Right.
book and had werewolves instead of regular wolves. But when I first started writing and trying to get published, I wanted to be a Western writer. Um, but I had an agent at the time, and he had a couple of westerns of mine, and trying to shop them around. But the market was the genre was so narrow as
Hmm.
far as western. You couldn't break into it. I mean, I did do a couple of the Jake Logan westerns. You know that the Jake Logan series was ghostwritten by like
Okay.
4 or 5 different writers, and
So is Jake Logan the house name, or is that the name of the characters? I'm not familiar with it.
that was the house name.
Okay.
The character's name was John Slocum in
Okay.
your book. But I remember my agent, he called me and said, do you want to get into this Jake Logan? It's ghostwriting. You make pretty good money. I mean, I did make off the cup. I only wrote 2 of them, and I made
Mhm.
like $5,000 each,
Right.
and you could write one in 2 weeks, and it was like 150 pages. I mean, that was a good paycheck for 2 weeks work.
Right. Right.
And so I called Joe Lansdale. Joe had he ghostwritten before, and I asked him.
Yeah, he's done some what like men's adventure novels that were like
Yeah,
war related, right? I've got one of them. I haven't read it yet, but yeah.
and he said yeah, I've ghostwritten before, and go for it if you want to. So I got in on it, and I did too, and then Berkeley canceled the series for a while,
Hmm.
and right, I could have done that all year and really raked it up, um but when they finally started back up, all the slots were filled, and I didn't get to do it anymore. So, um, but that was just a little departure. I like westerns, and I like to write westerns, and I may do some sometime in the future. But Timber Gray right now is the only one I have available, for people to read.
Is that a reprint?
So
Is that a
go
reprint?
ahead, Jeremy. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to ask, is it a reprint or is that fairly new?
Uh, well, Bad Moon Books put it out. I mean, my agent shopped around a long time, and we never could get it off the ground. And then I went to Bad Moon Books, and he said, "Yeah, I'll publish it for you." And so we put it out in trade paperback. It never did do too good, and it didn't sell too good. And then I put it out in ebook, um, and we do have an audio book too. So
So have you heard of what's this publishing house, Jeremy, that's doing these splatter westerns?
That is Death's Head
Death Head Press.
Press.
Are
That
you
was
familiar with that, Mr. Kelly?
that was
yes,
correct
yes.
to you, yeah.
Have you approached them and said, "Hey, this seems like a perfect fit for me"? Maybe pitch them something.
Well, it's funny because um, I have been talking to Paul Goblich at Thunderstorm Books for a long
Hmm.
time. I've done like 15 books with Paul, and I had this idea for horror western serial, which would be like 5 books over 3 years, and so I've made a deal with Paul.
Okay.
We're gonna put out. It's gonna be like a zombie gunfighter and a mojo man who's on the trail of a band of outlaw vampire outlaws who's stolen this man's son,
Okay.
and um, and every see, I originally pitched this to Berkeley back in 1992, 93 or something like that,
Hmm.
and but Berkeley didn't think I could sustain it because it would be like a monster a book. They would encounter a different monster or
Right.
creature every book, and you can't sustain that for very long because you run out of monsters. Um, but I've been wanting to do it for a long time, and Paul said, "Yeah, let's do it," and we're going to do um, each of these thunderstorm books is going to have like 3 separate creatures or monsters per book that they encounter, and we're going to do 5 volumes over 3 years. So, and it's not
Okay.
going to be so much a splatterpunk, but almost traditional horror kind of
Right.
western. And Alex McVeigh's going to do all the covers for him. He does a lot of my covers, and Zach McCain
Oh,
does a lot.
that's who that dude is.
Mm-hmm.
I was friends with him on Facebook, but I didn't actually know who he was.
Yeah, he mentioned you the other night when I talked to him too.
Yeah, so I just finished that novel, Something Out There, which was of course, a Zebra novel. I've not looked in to see if it's come out from any other presses since then. I picked up a lot of missing 411 vibes from that book. I'm sure you're, being a Tennessean, you're familiar with the Dennis Martin thing. Did that play any? Did you think about that at all when you were writing the book?
No,
I mean, I know that like the eventual. I mean, I won't say revealed, but I mean, what the creatures are definitely doesn't go in that direction. But just like the kind of the lore of the mountain kind of got me thinking in that direction. So that wasn't on your mind when you wrote the book?
No, I wrote that book in 1991, 92. So I don't know where I got the idea for that. I just had the idea for like a Tennessee mountain where there was a species of changelings and it was fun writing that book because I could have them change into anything I wanted to, and the Darken actually the book was originally titled The Darken, and of course Zebra changed all my titles except Bloodkin the vampire book, and but that was a fun book to write, and Zebra, they didn't know what to do with it first because they actually they didn't know whether to pick it as horror or science fiction or fantasy.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely put it in the horror category, but it had a very, I guess, comforting feel to it. I guess you put it in the cozy horror feel. Now, working with Zebra, what was that like? Were they kind of impersonal? Were they cool?
Yeah, it was an impersonal relationship. I mean, it was a very isolated relationship. I didn't have any contact with other Zebra writers, and this was way back before social media or the internet. I mean,
Right.
And you'd send your book to the agent, and he'd sell it for you, and then you'd go back and forth with the editor at the publishing house you got accepted to, and they if they accepted your book, that you sooner or later you get a big old proof. I mean, about the size of 2 phone books. I mean, it wasn't like today where you just get an email and it's in there. And
Yeah, now
I
I
mean,
can't. Sorry, go on.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say I can't really tell what kind of Tennessean you are based on the accent. Were you from around there in? I guess it's somewhat outside of Knoxville, or have you always been there from around Nashville?
Just around Nashville. I mean, I've lived within 80 miles of Nashville all my life. So,
I'd
so
say
yeah,
we're about 6 hours apart right now.
yeah.
I'm in the Tri-Cities
Mm-hmm.
myself, so that's what it like from say Kingsport. That would be like a 6 or 7 hour drive, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I'm basically right outside of Knoxville. About
Wow. So
15,
yeah, that and you've been you pretty successful. I mean, you actually have developed a reputation and a track record and a resume. I mean, out of writing, and you live here. That's amazing.
Well, I did write for a living, for like 6 years with Zebra, and until they shut their horror line down, and then I was out of a job. And,
yeah,
I
it's
mean,
kind of cool how it was considered like as a job back then. Whereas today, I mean, even if you're getting published, it's literally just a hobby. Like me, I've been published by Journal Stone, which you consider cool. And I think the most I've made on one royalty check was $20.
So after Zebra, was it Berkeley or Zebra that you say that shut down, or both of them did, right? Or is that
Well,
there,
around the mid '90s, a lot of mass market paperback publishers were shutting down their horror lines, but
right?
I wrote exclusively for Zebra back then.
So what did you have to do then after that money stream dried up? What did you just you got just like a day job and then just continue to write and sell on the side as much as you
uh,
could?
well, actually, I got a day job and I just worked. I mean,
Yeah.
I gave up writing for 10 years,
Okay. All right.
and I didn't read hard and I didn't write hard. So um, yeah, I pretty much just worked a plain old job and raised a family for since between 1996 and 2006.
Did you
Okay.
miss it?
Did you
What did you
did
say,
you did
Jim?
you miss it? Did you miss writing, or were you just resigned to it? How was that?
Well, after Zebra shut down, I got kind of bitter. You know,
Right.
um, I tried other because my agent told me to write anything but horror because at that point horror was sort of poisonous. I mean, a lot of the publishing houses didn't want to have anything to do with it. I mean,
Right.
it would it kind of gotten a glut in the genre and people wasn't buying as much as they were and they were getting burnt by bad books, badly written
Yeah,
books.
that is the case. Because one thing I wanted to talk to you about is I've read a lot of zebra books over the years, way too many. And there are certain authors who are actually good authors and have a command of the language, whereas
Mm-hmm.
you're reading the book and you can read it consistently all the way through, and it's like snappy. Like it's not just cliche characters and clunky trying to fill a word count. Like you can tell they actually know how to get in the headspace to write a novel.
Right.
You're one of those. Of course, Joe Lansdale, but he doesn't really count since he only had like one.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes Ruby Jean Jensen and sometimes William W. Johnstone. But for the majority of the authors, it's like if they were published by Zebra, it's like they really just couldn't write, which is so weird
Well,
because the books themselves is like products were freaking cool. Like I mean, they're fun to collect as a horror fan, but
mm-hmm.
actually reading them, I mean, I've gotten burnt on so many Zebra books, and some of them, I mean, some of them are bad, but then some of them are good and they stick out. Like, for instance, Something Out There had
Mm-hmm.
that type of vibe, but yeah, why was Zebra always considered bottom of the barrel? I find
well,
that strange considering their covers were so cool.
Zebra, they they recruited a lot of writers, a lot of new writers. I mean, uh, and a lot of these writers didn't have much experience. They had been published very much, and it was a learning experience for them. And like when I when I would I had been writing in the small press for like maybe 4 or 5 years, having short stories published and everything. So I
Yeah, it's
kind of
like
hope.
Stephen Grisham. He did too. He's another one that I forgot to mention that
Mm-hmm.
you could tell he was one of the good writers, and he too had been a published in the small press a lot before Zebra.
But Zebra was recruiting a lot of writers who it's like their first time, first novel and stuff, and they wasn't very polished um and Zebra the editing staff on Zebra, I mean, it was almost non-existent, the editing process, because usually when I got a proof of my book or something, it was pretty much the same as it was when I first sent it to them. So
Right.
so Zebra wasn't very big about editing, and I think their main objective was getting books out at least 2 or 3 a month.
Right. There was a high demand at the time.
Right, there was,
Right.
yes.
Yeah. So
So
they
you never
needed.
got one of those cool holographic covers, did you? Or a
No, I never
skeleton
did,
cover? You didn't
and
have
I never got any skeleton covers either. So, but the skeleton covers went out about 2 years before I came in. So, and sometimes I think, man, I wish I had at least one skeleton cover, but when I came in, the covers were more mainstream, and um, they got rid of all those goofy skeleton covers. So
Yeah. So what was the culture around horror books, back then? Like, was everyone reading them? Were there fewer readers back then? I mean, what was it like? Because I mean, nowadays being a reader is kind of a weird, like, I'm not gonna say isolated experience, but it's
Mhm.
like literally you don't know other readers in real life. That seems to be the case with most other people like I know in the writing community.
Right.
Was it back
Uh,
like that back then?
well, back then, I mean, you knew all the name writers. I mean, we didn't have the internet. Very, it was just coming in, and we didn't have social media, so you wasn't aware of a whole lot of. You knew if you went to the conventions back then, you met and knew the the writers who were being published. You didn't. Nowadays, I get on Facebook and I see all kinds of people who are self-publishing, and they're um, they're being published by the indie presses, and they're trying to get published. So you've got contact with a lot of different people that you didn't have contact with back then.
Yeah,
But
that
did
like
you know more people in your day-to-day life back then that actually read books for pleasure?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
Yeah.
people read more back then. Um, Nowadays, it seems like when people say horror, everybody thinks horror movies.
Right.
Slashers and um, 80s, horror movies and stuff like that, and they don't think, they might think of Stephen King, but they're not going to pretty much not think of anybody else as far as the author is concerned.
Right. So what do you think it was in the cultural milieu in the 80s that contributed to um, the publishers being able to sell so many of these horror books back in that time?
Well, I think King kind of, in the early '70s, got it kicked off, and people was reading his stuff, and then they was trying other people's books, horror authors' books, and it just really got to the point where horror was very, at least in the late '80s, early '90s, was a very very popular genre, and you know there was a lot of fans, but in the mid '90s it started dropping off, and like Zach said, people started getting burnt by bad books, and
Right.
and and uh,
So do you think it was just primarily King and the publishing industry just trying to basically uh, just doing what they saw was successful as far as just copying like they do in the movie industry, that type of
yeah,
thing?
yeah, pretty
well, I mean,
much.
we've talked to some other ones, and they said that like we had Tom Montelion on here too, who's really
Hmm.
cool, and he said I forgot what he said the number was, but it was in the thousands. That if you were selling this much per book, it was considered just below average. Whereas today, it would literally be marketed as a best-selling blockbuster. And maybe it's really just because back then, like I can envision that there were books everywhere and mass market books everywhere. Whereas
Hmm.
today, like you go in and a freaking novel in hardcover is literally, I mean, literally going to be $30, and
Right.
it's like they kill like I mean, I hate to like make business decisions for them, but do they want people to freaking read? Like I don't get it.
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, paperback books, the mass market paperbacks were everywhere back then. I mean,
Right.
they were in the drugstores, they were in supermarkets, they were in the airport terminals. I mean, if you wanted to buy a horror book, you didn't have to go very far to find one.
Yeah. I
And
mean, I remember seeing what is it, Necroscope right
mhm,
by the checkout lane in my local grocery store, right? I mean, that's like
right.
the first time I ever saw that, you know?
Hmm. And there were more bookstores back then. I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of them have died out. All the brick and mortar bookstores, they've really died out. And I mean, but we had tons of bookstores back then, and I had a lot of signs at used bookstores. There were a lot of used bookstores back then,
Yep.
and there's not so many.
Yep, that's true. Yeah, everywhere you went, and there was, like I said, there was, like you said, there was tons of bookstores back in the day. And I remember my mom would just drop me off at the bookstore and come back 2 hours later, right? And she would just go
Hmm.
run her errands or whatever the case may be, and I would just look through these massive walls of, paperbacks that all had these lurid covers on them, and it was fantastic. I mean, like the horror novels, and then like the men's adventure novels and the
Hmm.
post-apocalyptic novels. There was like a lot of this stuff was published by Berkeley and Zebra, like
Right.
SOBs and Mac Bolan type stuff. I mean,
Hmm.
there was a lot of I don't know. There was markets back then that just don't exist now. There's really no market now for like a men's adventure novel. It's very similar to horror. Like it died off too.
I
Right.
think the
Yeah.
market for men's adventure is there. They just won't touch it for various reasons.
Yeah.
That's possible. It's possible, I suppose.
The last book that you wrote before you went on hiatus or
Hmm.
gave up for a while, um, I guess you just kind of put what you conceived to be considered to be a childish toys away, and all right, time to grow up and be the man of the house, the family man, and whatnot. Is that what you were thinking? I mean,
Well, yeah, in a way, yeah. Um, me and my wife had been married since '91. We lived in Nashville. We wanted to raise a family. We didn't want to raise it in the city. We were both country folks, and
Right.
and so around the time, a little bit before Zebra shut down the hard line, we moved out to the country, way out in the country. We lived, I mean, the place that we lived, there was, cows on three sides of the house. So
Right.
that's pretty rural. But um, when I actually when Zebra shut down, they had two more of my books scheduled, and I was really looking forward to having them published. And when they shut down, they just gave them back to me and said, "Here, and that made me bitter too. And I just I figured I'd had my shot, and it was over, and so I just went to work and kind of forgot about writing for a while.
So that was a 10-year period, right? And I think a
Hmm.
similar thing happened to another author from that era, Brian McNaughton. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, I've heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah, so he also, kind of took a 10-year hiatus and went out and
Hmm.
got various jobs, and then ultimately came back and started writing again. So um, what was the impetus for you to start again, right? Because I mean, you have published recently, or you
Hmm.
after this 10-year period, you got back into it. What happened that made you feel like you needed to get back into it?
Well, I had an old friend from back when I was, around the time of Fear, and um, he went to a lot of conventions. He was a good Brian Keene, and he was one of the moderators uh, on his board, and when Brian had it up, and we get in contact, and he'd say, "Ron, you need to get back in the genre, and you need to start writing." And I say, "No, I'm through with that. I don't have any desire to do that anymore." And he brought me he went to a convention and brought me a big stack of books, a lot of Brian Keene books and James Newman and Brian Smith, and they were all signed to me, and they all knew who I was.
Hmm.
And they were, one of the books that Brian signed for me said, "You were a great inspiration, and thank you." And it just kind of sparked something in me. I thought,
Right.
maybe it wasn't over with after all. Maybe I'd actually done something worthwhile back then.
So, do you think that this 10-year period where you're out in the world having experiences, getting your hands dirty or whatnot,
Hmm.
do you think that ultimately added something to your new books that you've written? Did you think that it maybe it made you a better writer, maybe a little bit more empathetic, or maybe a little bit more of the world?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when I was writing for Zebra, I mean, it was pretty much a learning experience for me, and
Right.
I was still honing my craft and everything like that. And it seemed like when I came back after 10 years, I had a fresh perspective, and I actually think I wrote better. I wasn't, you know, my writing wasn't quite as cumbersome. I mean, one of the bad things about writing with Zebra is they always wanted these big doorstopper books,
Mm.
and they wanted you to fill them with lots of characters and a lot of subplots, and sometimes it was hard to fit all that in because maybe you wanted to write a 200-page book and they wanted you to write a 500-page book.
Right.
Yeah, I've noticed that. That's the number one thing about Zebra that I can't stand is that I mean, a length like that needs to be reserved for special epic books.
But actually, it was a stipulation in Zebra's contract that you write a book that length.
Yeah, but
The
from an
first,
artistic point, it's just so weird
yeah,
because, a lot of these, the best horror novels I've read have always been on the shorter side, and that helps them
right,
because they're more emotionally intense at certain parts. Kind of, plodding that out kind of takes away the intensity. I'm
yeah.
not saying like the horror intensity, but just I don't know. You just think of a horror story as shorter. It just seems natural.
Mm-hmm.
It
So
doesn't seem like Zebra was all that interested in what was between the covers, really, were they? I mean, they were just more interested in having a gaudy, lurid cover to get you to buy the book, and they just
A
wanted
gaudy,
it to be,
lurid, beautiful
and they wanted, well, yeah, they are awesome, right? I mean, I'm not saying that they're not, but I mean, it seems like they were mainly concerned with the cover being eye
Yeah,
catching, selling the book, and then the book being a certain length, so you felt like you're getting your money's worth, right?
yeah. I mean that was their business. I mean they
Right,
were just out to market as many books as they could, in a
right,
year's time, and I mean it was at a point in the horror, where people they were hungry for horror and they were buying them up, and and a whole lot of readers back then loved the big door stoppers, and they thought they got their money worth
right.
when they paid $3.95 for a big 500-page book. They think they got their money's worth.
And King probably set that too, right? I mean, as
Yeah,
far
yeah.
as, I mean,
Like with it
yeah,
and Tommy Knockers and stuff like that. Yeah, he kind of set that up, because
right,
for a while in his career he did write really long books. So.
right. Yeah. So there
in
was another thing of just imitating what was successful. Yeah.
needlessly long in many cases. But
Mm-hmm.
I think I remember. I haven't read it yet, but Toy Cemetery by John Stone or William Johnstone. Uh,
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing book.
I think Grady said that like Johnstone had threw a lot of like random subplots in there, like a werewolf shows up in there for no reason.
A werewolf ghost.
That's cool, but that was probably him filling time, filling out the book, padding it out to make it
Mm-hmm.
longer, if it maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he had fun with that one. I freaking love that book.
I've heard of that one. Yeah, I hadn't read it, but I've heard of it. But I really made a conscious effort to I didn't want to throw a bunch of junk in there that didn't make sense or didn't belong there or anything. I tried my best to write a coherent narrative that would interest you and bring you through there, and you wouldn't lose interest, and I mean it'd be a fast read,
Right.
and I think I did that for the majority of the books I did. I did eight books for Zebras, so in a 6-year period. So
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, you must have been writing like crazy to get
I
the
was, yeah.
400, 500, 2 or 3 of those a year.
Yeah.
Now the last book that they published, Blood Kin, I was we were in Nashville. It was we were hurting for money. I mean, Zebra didn't pay all that great. I mean,
Right.
it was on the low end of the scale. You know what authors got paid back then, but I really need the money when I wrote Blood Kin, and I wrote it in 2 weeks.
Wow.
But I mean, I think it turned out really well. I mean, it was one of those books that you got the idea, and it would just. I mean, it I put all the Southern horror stuff. It was a different kind of vampire book. I mean, the vampire, he didn't turn into bats and rats
Right.
and stuff like that. He turned into weasels and crows and wild boars and stuff.
Interesting.
Flesh Welder. What is that? Sounds amazing. It looks amazing.
Flesh Welder was it was a novella that I put out in the small press back in 1988 or something like that. It's a post-apocalyptic story about a doctor who's he has the ability to weld flesh and bone like a blue collar welder. He's found a
Yeah.
way to repair people. And because there's like there's wars going on and all that, and it's one of my better novellas. So
Oh, and you got
Wasn't doing you
Wayne
from
June does the
985
audiobook.
hours.
yeah, Wayne June did.
Oh man, that guy's great. Yeah.
That's I believe that's the only one he ever did. Um, Croatoan Publishing, they put out the
Oh no, I mean,
paperback of,
wait, the only one he ever did for you, you mean, or period?
yes, for me, yeah.
Oh, okay, for you, okay, because I know he did Throne of Bones. I'm pretty sure that's the Brian McNaughton that I was talking about earlier. But
Yeah.
okay, but I'm going to buy this Flesh Welder right now. It looks great.
All right.
I hope you enjoy it.
Speaking of werewolves, so Undertaker's Moon, was that your first novel upon your return, or was it Hell Hollow?
No, it was Hell Hollow was the first one after I returned. Now, Undertaker's Moon is just Moon of the Werewolf. That was Moon of the Werewolf was my, let's see,
91.
yeah, fourth Zebra novel, and it was originally titled Moon of the Werewolf, and of course Zebra changed the title and used the most generic werewolf title that they could come up with, and
Yeah,
but when I
Moon is definitely a better sounding title to me.
yeah, and um, when I came back, the first publisher that contacted me was Nocturne Press. They went out of business, like a year after we got involved, and they wanted to do uh, Undertaker's Moon, and Alex McVeigh did that wonderful blue werewolf cover. That's
Yeah,
that's
it
one of
was
my
nice cover.
one of my favorite covers that I've ever had on a book.
It's very. I mean, it's very. You're talking about Undertaker's Moon.
Yeah,
Cover? Yeah,
the blue werewolf.
it's very crisp and colorful. Yeah. I've made it a little way into that. That's a multi-perspective book as far as characters, right? It's not
Yeah.
settled on one perspective. Yeah. See, sometimes I can struggle with those, but other times it's like I make an instant connection with every character, and I haven't decided which way I'm going with as far as that one yet. But I am enjoying some of the stories I've read in the Halloween store. How many collections have you written now?
Oh well, I've as far as published, I mean, I've got several small ones in ebook. The first one I had was Midnight Grinding. That came out with Cemetery Dance. Put that out around the same time as Hell Hollow when I first came back, and I think that was like 2009, 2010 that those two books came out. I put out a second collection called Cumberland Furnace and Other Fear Forged Fables. Bad Moon put that out. It's not available in paperback, but it is a smaller version of it's available in ebook. Let's see, I did a post-apocalyptic collection called After the Burn. Thunderstorm did that, and we've got that out in ebook right now. And I did another Halloween collection called Mr. Glowbones and Other Halloween Tales.
Yeah, I like the cover of that one. I like the dang skeleton shirt.
Now, I actually painted that cover myself. I painted the skeleton on there. So, because other than being a writer, I am an artist, and I'm not as polished as like Alex McVeigh or Zach McCain, but I like to dabble with art, and I actually wanted to be a comic book artist. When I was back in high school.
I've
So
got that one
what cover
too.
did you do, Mr. Glowbones? You say?
I did Mr. Glowbones, and
Okay.
I did the ebook cover for Restless Shadows, which was a sequel to my first novel, Hindsight.
Okay, right there.
That's Mr. Glowbones.
I like that one.
And it's funny because on the internet they started selling these Hawaiian shirts with jack-o'-lanterns on it, and I thought, well, I need to get a royalty for that because I came up with that shirt before anybody else.
What are you more comfortable with, full length novels and novellas, or short story collections?
Short story collections. I mean, I'm basically a short story writer. I mean, when I came up in the small press before I got with Zebra, that's what I wrote. I wrote short stories, and they're more satisfying to me than writing novels. Novels is a heavy investment. And sometimes you get to the end of it and it doesn't end exactly the way you want it to, and people with a novel, people mostly want a solid ending where everything's wrapped up and tied up, and with short stories I can let it hang at the end and let everybody decide what happened after that. A lot of people don't like that. A lot of people, they want all the strings tied and tied up good, but I
Hey,
like the
Yeah. I don't
I
like
like
the ended. I don't like the open ended endings either myself, but I can give the author a little bit of leeway as far as just being a reader. I can give him a little bit of leeway with an open ended ending, but what I
mhm,
hate is when authors say during interviews, "I want the reader to decide for themselves what happened." I feel like it's a shared experience, and so I don't want me to tell you because you're not going to listen to that anyway.
mhm,
But it should be something that you can communicate to me. That that makes it come to life even more. Like, did you notice that this character said this? In the penultimate chapter, and did you know
mhm.
that what they were referring to had to do with this right here? I hate it when they're so open ended that there's no resolution whatsoever.
Right.
So,
I mean, it's fine with a short story, but with the novel, I can see where you would say that. I mean, with
Well,
a short story, you're a little bit more forgiving, I think, in that regard.
right. When Brian King wrote the Rising and he left it hanging at the end, a lot of people, I mean, that freaked a lot of people out. But
it was
I've always,
unconventional at the time, of course.
mm-hmm.
So, um, what do you foresee any of your books becoming, developed for the cinema? Despite all that's going on right now and how it's not a good time to be a moviegoer or a movie
Mm-hmm.
director or anything. I mean, have you ever had talks about that sort of thing?
Well, I actually did. I mean, I had some interest in somebody doing a film of Hell Hollow, and it was coming really close until COVID hit.
Um,
And I mean, it wasn't like they were ready to start recruiting a cast or anything like that. But I mean, we were in talks, and there was some interest, but yeah, I mean, this whole situation, with COVID and everything's really, I mean, it's really put a damper on um, a lot of authors who had things lined up and had some interest, or just been left holding the bag. It seems like.
So, Ron, this is going to be awkward, and I guess I'm going to prove Chet Williamson right when he called me self-indulgent and unprofessional. But I've got to step away now.
Mm-hmm.
We can wrap the interview there, or if you're having a good time, you can continue speaking with my co-hosts. I'll probably be checking back every few minutes, but this is a semi-family thing that and it only comes once a year anyway, close to Halloween, and so I am, as the main host, am abandoning my perch for a little bit. If you want to continue speaking with these gentlemen, feel free, or if you want to wrap there, that's fine too. It's been an honor speaking with you, and I'm glad to be familiarizing myself with your work now.
Well, it's nice meeting you too.
Can you put it back on the thingy
Which thing?
where we can see everyone?
Okay.
Yeah.
Which one was it? Was it that? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to mute, and Zach, if there's any technical things you need, just text me. You got my number still, right?
Yeah.
And I will be in and out every, 5 to 10 minutes. And I'm sorry that this is terribly awkward, Mr. Kelly. If it were any other night, I wouldn't resort to this, but
That's fine.
Okay. But if you want to continue talking, guys, go right ahead. I'll be back.
So with this Timber Gray, our host here, who's abandoning us now, told us about that, and he read it. He really liked it quite a bit. It sounds like, I don't know why I think this, but I know why I think this first piece, but not necessarily the second. It seems like there's maybe a Jack London feel to it. Is that
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I used to read a lot of Louis L'Amour, and that, I think that's got kind of a feel of that too. And I mean,
what
I
about
used
a
to read,
Robert E. Howard? I mean, it seems like there might be like almost a epic fantasy
right,
tinge to it, right? It seems like it's almost got a
maybe.
Conan, but in the West kind of a vibe. That's what it sounds like. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Do
I
you like
would.
Robert D. Howard? Am I way
Yeah,
off? And okay.
yeah. I liked a lot of the old pulp writers, and
Right. It sounds like a really good pulp adventure book. So
right.
I just grabbed it from the library. So
Yeah.
I'm
Speaking
going
of
to take a
pulp
look at that.
adventure and zebra, were you a big fan of John Stone or not?
Johnstone, I've read a few of his books. I mean, I mostly read outside of Zebra. I mean, I didn't read a whole lot of Zebra books. I mean, I wrote them, but I didn't. I read some Rick Hockler, but I mostly read, like Robert McCammon and Lansdale, and read a lot of King and Richard Matheson. I read a lot of Richard Matheson, but I
Yeah,
didn't
I
read
didn't
a
know if
lot
you,
of Zebra books.
yeah, I didn't know if you'd read any of his westerns or not, because that was kind of what he's most well known for. And
Right? Yeah.
it seemed like he kind of built the horror line and then went over and abandoned it to do westerns. But
Well, maybe he did that after Zebra dropped. I don't know if that was it or not. But
oh, you can still find his westerns put out, not now with the Zebra moniker, about, I think it's Pinnacle or whatever, still Kensington, that you can find his books in dang Walmart and whatnot nowadays.
right. Well, I think they're being written by his. He's not alive anymore, so
Right.
I think they're being written by his grandson or his son or something like that. But if you'll look, it'll say William Johnstone, and then I think it's J.A. Johnstone.
Yeah.
Underneath.
Let's see. Yeah. So did you read the genre when you were taking your 10-year hiatus, or were you so bitter you couldn't even read it?
No, I just put everything on the back burner. I mean,
did you read westerns during that time frame? Did you still read books for pleasure?
Well, I didn't read a whole lot. I don't think. It's just I just got soured on the whole writing business and didn't read a whole lot.
Well, I'm glad you came back.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I did too.
Yeah, because I mean, even though there are less readers nowadays, just the fact that books are so easily accessible is really a reason for everyone who wants to write to be writing, in my opinion, because it's not like, I mean, some people go at it with the wrong impression of trying to chase some kind of internet fame or, you know,
Yeah.
something like that. But I mean, just as far as contributing to literature for the fun of it, I mean, it's pretty novel, pardon the pun.
So do you have the rights back to all your old stuff, and have you self-published those on your own?
Well, I got Crossroad Press. They
Oh, they're doing it for you. Okay.
they do
Yeah,
all
they
my
do everyone.
e-books. Yeah, I think they do. Uh, um, they do all my ebooks and audio books, and they're starting to do some paperbacks. So
Yeah.
I do want to have, but it seems like I've got, as far as paperbacks, I've got Hell Hollow and Undertaker's Moon and Fear. Let's see, is that it? And The Buzzard Zone in paperback. But when people want to read Fear or Undertaker's Moon, they want to just go buy an old Zebra book. They don't want to buy the new one. They want the ones with old covers and stuff like that. I guess that's part of this resurgence where they want to.
Right, like vinyl records, right? Almost,
Yeah.
it's what the
Hmm.
classic feel, and then yeah, yeah. Those painted covers are great. I mean, the covers in those old paperbacks were fantastic. Yeah,
The funny thing about that was you would get a cover flat, and, with everything set up on it, and you didn't know that was the first time you found out that they changed the title. And sometimes you didn't like the cover because it didn't go with the story, because usually Zebra would give, like, the cover artist a little germ of an idea of what your book was about, and they do a cover, and it didn't, it really didn't have a whole lot to do with what was inside, because something out there, the big lizard thing coming over the top of the mountain, wasn't in the book. I mean, um, so I don't know where they
so
came up with that.
back in the day, did you get kind of ticked off about that? And then, like, later on, did you think, you know what, maybe they knew what they were doing and that cover really is cool? Did you ever have a change of heart?
I I, I did get ticked off about things. I mean, Father's Little Helper, which was 12 gauge. I used, like, in a subtitle. I said Father's Little Helper because when this mass murderer went on his rampage, the main character, who was a serial killer, was a child, and his father told him to be Father's Little Helper, and they took that one little thing and put it on as the title, and I didn't like that. I thought,
Gotcha, yeah.
and I went to the editor and I said, let's can't you change this title back to 12 gauge? And they wouldn't do it. They had to say so, and so, but then I got used to it, and I was just happy I was being published.
What about, like, the cover art? Did you ever have any major objections to any of the cover art, or were you always in line with them as far as that
No,
goes?
no, I mean, they made it where it was eye catching and sellable, and I never really, except for, that one time with Something Out There, where that big lizard's coming over the top that wasn't in the book. But
That
now,
is true. That lizard was not in the book.
no, it wasn't.
He was kind of in there. I mean, a couple
Well, I
times.
mean, if he'd been black and gray like in the book, I mean, because the Darkin, everything he turned into was black and gray, and then the other changelings were albino and they were white and pink, but this was a colored lizard coming over the top of the.
That's
Okay,
funny.
I'm back. I'm back. It was Simpsons was preempted for baseball, so never mind.
Baseball is sports are so lame. I can't stand them. They take away everything.
Especially when I think I'm watching the Treehouse of Horror. I don't know if it's even. Well, I don't know. Maybe I got the date wrong. I don't know. Anyway, that actually worked out okay. So, Thunderstorm Books, they deal mostly in limited edition
Yeah.
books, right?
Right. Yeah.
But it almost always comes out later in a regular release, right?
Yeah. I just when one of my books comes out with Thunderstorm, I just make the deal to do the hardcover, the limited. and I always go somewhere. That's one thing that I learned after Zebra. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, you know.
Right.
And I mean, keep your rights for the different, you know, like for your paperbacks and your audiobooks and you know hardcovers. You know, just keep it separate where you have the option of going to different places. You know, because some of you know some of indie presses and stuff go out of business. You don't want to shoot yourself in the foot. You know.
Right. Yeah.
Now, how do you jive with the writing culture? I remember a couple times there were some social media discrepancies, which we've all had those. I've had probably
Mm.
way more of those than anyone. I've made so many people mad at me, from Brian Keene. I mean, so many people in the horror community hate me. But like, how do you jive with it? Do you?
I I kind of get along with them. I mean, I do better on Facebook than I do Twitter. Twitter is, you know, there's all these little clicks and and if you don't step in their steps and you know dance to their music, they can turn on you like, you know, a pack of wild dogs. You know,
So do you just long
Facebook.
for the days just going back to conventions and only really getting the interaction there? Because I mean,
Mhm. I don't go to very many conventions. You know, of course, this year it was, you know, it's pretty much not any conventions, but um,
I mean, Scares That Cares. Where's that? That's not that far from where you all are, right?
no, no, that'd be like a 8 hour drive from where I live, but and I was actually going to. Brian invited me to be a guest at Scares That Cares, and and I think I had to bow out before the COVID even, because you know we had something. Me and my family had something scheduled that
I
weekend.
see.
So.
Okay. Yeah. So, but you're not a big convention goer, and you never have been, or you just haven't since your reemergence.
Well, you know, I went to, you know, back when I was writing for Zebra. I mean, they had the first two World Horror Conventions in Nashville. I mean,
Okay.
and I did go to a couple of those and saw a lot of great people. You know, Robert Block and Carl Ed Wagner and Charlie Grant was there. And
That'd be
uh,
cool meeting Robert Block.
yeah, I mean, I actually went. There was like a room upstairs in the hotel where they had like monster models set up, and you know, it was like these specialized monster models people built, and I went up there to look at them, and there was Robert Block and Forrest J. Ackerman, you know, the
Wow.
publisher of Famous Monsters there, and it just blew me away, you know. And I actually did talk to them, and uh, and they were very gracious and you know down to earth, you know. But yeah, yeah, when you went to back there, back to conventions back then, you would come across people like that. And I remember taking some books to have Richard Matheson sign, and you know, I think I took I Am Legend and Hell House and
Right.
The Stricken Man, but he's the only one that really floored me. It really, I mean, I went total fanboy on him. You know, but,
On
uh,
Ackerman
no,
or
on
Listen,
Matheson.
Richard Matheson.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, he's great. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
what about
Imagine meeting Robert Block. It'd be freaking awesome.
what about screenplays? You dabbled with that? Any?
No, I never have. You know, I don't think I know the mechanics of a screenplay well enough to try to write one. I
I
mean,
gotta say, I've read a couple screenplays. It, I mean, I'm not gonna say it makes you look at movies differently, but it's like you really don't like, especially as a writer. It's kind of like so much of the things that you like about the movies do seem to come out like in the filming as opposed to the screenplay, because
hmm
screenplay is just so bare bones, and
right,
it's
yeah.
just
Yeah, I guess it depends on who wrote the screenplay, right? I think, but I think in general, you're right, Zach. I mean, that's definitely the case. It seems to be very bare bones. I
yeah.
think
The
some
worst one
screenplay
I've read
writers
was
do get really deep into the details. But go, what were you gonna say, Zach?
I was gonna say the worst screenplay I've ever read, ironically, was by Stephen King. That one for that stupid movie with the cat and the gnome.
Oh
What?
yeah, Cat's
Cat's
Eye.
Eye?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Now
It's a great
that
anthology movie, though.
yeah. I think
Yeah,
the
I mean, it
movie.
was good. It was a good cheesy movie. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, most of those stories that was on that movie were from his Night Shift collection. I mean,
Yeah.
When the guy has to walk around the building, oh my
yes.
God, man, gets that tenses me up every time I watch it, even today. I thought every story in that anthology movie was on point, and
Wait, what was
including the troll story, Cat's Eye.
Cat's Eye.
so the whole movie's called Cat's Eye.
Yeah.
Huh? I didn't know that.
Now the story of him walking around the building was better. I mean, it was the fictional version that he wrote was actually better than the movie version. I thought
Hmm.
very
Frank,
successful.
Frank Edler of the Bazong podcast has a question. Are there any new writers that you're excited about?
Oh yeah, there's quite a few. And these might not be new writers to you, but like Jonathan Jantz. I love Jonathan.
Mhm.
I've been reading like Summer Cannon and Wesley Southern, um, John Quick, Todd Kiesling. I've read some of his stuff, and
I've
I'm
never
getting
heard of these people. I'm not familiar with any of them. What?
Oh, you've
Yeah, I've
never
well,
heard of them.
they're
I've heard of
new.
them all, but I've not read any of them.
I've
Yeah.
Yeah,
read
I
Jonathan
mean,
Jan's his first novel, House of Skin.
there these are a lot of people coming out of the indie presses and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
Todd Kiesling, he's got a book that's got, I think, quite a bit of buzz right now. Right, what is it called?
Devil's Creek.
Yeah, Devil's Creek. Yeah, that's supposed to be really good. Have you read that
Yeah.
one?
I've got it on my Kindle. I hadn't sat down and read it. I'm
Yeah,
gonna.
that's supposed to be like a breakout novel for him, is my understanding.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I've read some Josh Malerman. I like Josh.
Right.
And of
Well,
course, I've been reading Brian Keene, and some of the earlier ones who were published by Leisure.
Right.
I started reading them when I came back.
how do you feel it's changed from before? Better or worse?
Wait, I want to answer for him. Worse.
Okay.
Let the man answer.
Wait. What are you actually asking though? I don't know that you're. What are you asking though? Do you think
Has
that?
it changed for the better or worse? And I'm talking
What
about
do you mean it? What is it?
horror fiction.
Okay. All right.
And I mean in terms of content, not in terms of politics. We know the politics are worse than ever, and the political correctness, social justice / whatever, whiny, like cliquish, like pressure tactics, peer
Yeah,
pressure.
the Babylonian horror empire.
Yeah, well, whatever. I don't care so much about that. Neither do they. That's just you reading too much into it.
I know that was a joke, Jeremy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, I can't see you, Miss. You said you had the fancy webcam, but I can't see you to tell if you're joking or not. But
The inflection of my voice should make it come through.
oh God, it's grating. That's all I know about. No, but so what I mean is, in terms of content, has it improved, or do you feel that there are some hurdles to get over with modern fictions, that has sprung up since you came back?
Well, it's different. Um, horror has a whole different feel than it did back when I was writing it. And when I was writing it, it seemed like you could read a book without even seeing who the author was, and you could tell who it was because everybody had a very unique voice back then. And,
Right.
That's the funny thing about Zebra. Like, I think I finally found what you said is what I think about Zebra. It's like a lot of horror writers have a distinctive voice, and you were one of them in Zebra. But a lot of the Zebra writers, it's like they wrote without a style. Like they just kind of like how, like, say the difference between a John Carpenter Halloween movie and then a Friday the 13th movie. Like
Right.
Friday the 13th kind of style. It's not that it's worse, but I'm sure you get what I mean.
Well, one thing I had for me is going for me was regional. I mean, I was writing Southern horror. I mean, it was all set in the South,
Right.
and there wasn't a lot of writers writing that back then, and people seemed to be hungry for something different. I mean, you had like Charlie Grant doing New England horror, and King was doing his main horror, and if um, and then I came in and when I started selling short stories at the beginning, people were snapping them up. I mean, the editors were snapping them up because they were something different, and had a different voice to it, different mood to it,
Right.
and but that's always worked for me. Sometimes I think when I write nowadays, I don't put as much of the southern stuff in. Sometimes I'm just more concerned with just writing a good story. But lately, I've really gotten creative and everything like that, and I am going kind of gravitating back to a lot of the rural stories and stuff.
So before when you were talking about the difference between modern horror and the horror from back in the day, you seem like you were going towards a path where you were saying back in the day there was way more distinctive voices. Were you saying that is in contrast to what you see out there today, that there's not quite as many distinctive voices as there were back in the 80s, early 90s?
Well, I don't read a whole lot. I mean, I write more than I read now,
Right.
But the ones I have read, there's two or three that, if their name was left off the book, I couldn't really tell which one was which,
Yeah. Right.
I'm not going to say who that is, but.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to ask you either. Right? So, okay,
Well, the
so that's
one
an
thing
interesting
about,
thing.
oh, I was gonna say the problem I have with a lot of modern horror is that a lot of it's way too much about horror. Like
Right.
the writers will be referencing horror movies, and
Yeah, I don't like
sometimes
that
horror
either.
writers, yeah, I really can't stand that.
Well, say, you got this thing now where everybody's nostalgic about the 80s.
Right.
Shoot, when I in the 80s, I was, in my late 20s, but there's not anything for me to be nostalgic about the 80s, but because I grew up in the 60s and 70s.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I see a lot of that injected into movies and books now, where oh, let's get nostalgic about the 80s and 90s, and that doesn't appeal to me that much.
In the middle of the
Yeah.
story. Yeah. It
Nobody wants to take anything forward. Everybody wants to
Right.
reminisce, and that
Well,
gets on my
That's
nerves.
because the
well,
engine.
in a way, I'm like that too. I like to, like, especially like in the Halloween collections. I like to go for the nostalgia, but
Well, I
that's
mean,
because
that's
that's because it's
germane to the
Halloween.
that's germane though. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what I mean. You would expect that from a Halloween
Right.
story, right? I mean, you're looking for a particular I don't know. There's a particular promise in the premise of a Halloween story, and I think the nostalgia is almost a requirement in a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because
Right.
especially folks that are as old as I am,
How
as
old
old
are
as you are, when we were Halloween to us meant you could just run around in the streets till late at night with your buddies and your brothers and
Right.
sisters. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And there
Yeah.
was no, you got to do it from 6 to 8, and then when it's dark, you got to go home, right? I mean, it was an all night affair,
Right.
running wild through the streets, causing
Yeah.
trouble, right? I mean, and that's, a huge appeal to Halloween. And I think when you're writing a Halloween story, you've got to capture that.
Mm-hmm. But that like you said, our parents they didn't know where we were on Halloween. They
No,
didn't care. I mean, they were at
right.
home passing out candy, and I think that kind of colors some of the fiction nowadays, because things are different now,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a lot of things that nobody worried about back then that people are scared to death of now.
well,
Correct.
I think a lot of ways that's. I don't want to say it's completely a media induced panic over something that's not real. In some ways, it is real, but I think when it's like you're talking about two different types of nostalgia there. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
the people, when they do nostalgia stuff today, it's nostalgic for past media Whereas what Gregor's talking about is literally nostalgic for past life experiences.
Right. Yes.
Right.
Which is kind
Yeah.
of
So yeah, it's more of a nostalgia for a past shared life experience, right? When you were talking about the specific Halloween stories that we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's not just, oh, I'm going to be writing a homage to, Halloween, the movie Halloween, right? I mean, I
Right.
would
Yeah.
never do such a thing, but yeah, definitely for the nostalgic feeling of being a kid back in the 80s, running loose in the streets, right, on Halloween. That's I mean, that's something that I genuinely would like to get the feeling out of when I'm reading a Halloween story.
Right.
What do you like? What do you like writing better in terms of vampires or werewolves or any other archetype, horror archetype? Like, I don't. I'm sure you've written a serial killer novel at some point.
Yeah.
What is your favorite archetype to write about?
Well, I don't really have one. When I wrote for Zebra, I consciously wanted to write something different every time. I didn't want to write 7 or 8 evil doll books or evil children books.
Right.
like a
And
Jensen.
that kind of drove Zebra up the wall because every time I wrote one, it was completely different from the one before. And I didn't. I've written books about ghosts and werewolves and vampires. I mean, I've covered all the bases, and I wrote a zombie book a few years ago. It didn't go over too good because I think everybody's kind of sick of zombies now.
Yeah, you're late to the party on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I did a good job, and I gave some new perspective to some stuff, and I think it was one of the best books I ever wrote. But it just you know everybody got so sick of zombies
Right.
and if I hadn't procrastinated and done it 3 years earlier, it might have done a whole lot better.
Is there a horror archetype creature or monster that you haven't written yet that you would like to write?
Uh, I'd like to write a book about the Bell Witch because it's a local legend, but so many people's delved into
Right.
that I don't think I could. I think it'd just be rehashing some stuff that people's already written about the Bell
Yeah.
Witch. But
Have you written
right,
a? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
well, right now I'm just kind of when a lot of short stories, I just take ordinary everyday situations, put a dark twist on it or something like that. And I've always done that with short stories. And um, but I don't see myself doing a lot of stuff with vampires and zombies. I mean vampires and werewolves because I've already covered that ground, and unless I do a sequel to an older book, maybe. But
Well, you've got this Western thing that has some of these monsters in it, right? I mean,
yeah, I'll be satisfied doing that for a while.
Right. Have you written a monster that like a water monster, right? Like a sea monster or a lake monster? Have you written a monster like a water monster story?
No, I've never done that before. I don't think.
Yeah. So that one of the ones you haven't covered?
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
so.
I hear a home phone ringing in the background. Somebody still has a home phone.
I think that's in the next room. I think my wife got a call or something.
It's a landline.
Somebody's actually got a
No,
yeah. Wow.
her cell phone. She just has it on the old fashioned ring.
Okay.
So what is your latest work anyway? Is it Buzzard Zone or?
No, Buzzard Zone was a few years ago. The latest one is Central Six stuff from Shamrock, Silver Shamrock, and both
Sure,
that and
Shamrock. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you've never heard of them?
Yeah, they've been putting out some good stuff, as from what I understand.
yeah, I've been wanting to do the Central Six stuff, but I put out a couple of collections through Thunderstorm. I put out the Six stuff, and that was like 2009, and more Six stuff a couple of years ago, and I wanted to put out like the Essential Six stuff with a new collection of stories, all three of them together. And I talked to Ken McKinley, and he said, yeah, let's do it. And so we put that together, and Alex McVeigh did the big tick cover of it, and uh, the so it's selling good, and people, the reviews are really good on it. It's mostly my old splatterpunk kind of stories. Back in the '90s, everybody was wanting to outdo each other and writing the most disgusting stories that they could. And Skip Inspector and David J. Skyle and a bunch of them were doing like cutting edge. Back then it was considered cutting edge. Now it's just like extreme,
Right.
splatterpunk stories. But yeah, I did a lot of them back then, and that's what I put in the six stuff collections.
There are fictional like factions when it comes to horror. Like some are more traditionalist, like I would say your Thomas Monteleones and Chet Williamson, and
Right.
then you have ones that are more on the extreme side that came up, and cut their teeth on the extreme stuff. Like Skip Inspector and David Scow and Kathy Koja, maybe. I guess you strike me as more of a neutral territory guy on that argument.
I do. Yeah, I jump back and forth. I mean, I've jumped back and forth before, trying to. But it's not, like it wasn't like conscious, like I'm going to write what sells best, at that particular time or anything. I just like to have a varied palette of, different writing styles and stuff I can do. It's not like, I'm jumping on the bandwagon for the latest craze or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So your collection, the Halloween store, right?
Mm-hmm.
So did you publish the Halloween store? Is the Halloween store an actual story in the collection?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's the
Okay.
first
Was that
story
published prior to that? And where was that published prior?
No, that's a new story. I
Okay.
had like 5 new stories in the Halloween store and 2 old stories. Now, the 2 old stories, when I used to write short stories, back in the short small press days, you'd write a seasonal story like a Halloween story or a Christmas story, and maybe the the editor didn't want a seasonal story, and you'd go back and you take the Halloween or the Christmas out.
Right.
But now I'm going back and put them back in and put them in collections, and it fits really well.
So how many tales are in this Halloween store?
It's 7 tales and 2 essays, nostalgic essays, and
Okay.
um, I really had a lot of fun writing this. I actually only got the idea to even put it together like in early August,
Wow.
and I thought everybody's so sick of hearing about COVID and social, civil unrest and
Right.
tearing down statues and all this, and let's just have a little fun. Let's go back and nobody knows what Halloween's going to be like this year because I went in Walmart yesterday and they had all the Halloween candy 50% off, and that's crazy for
Yeah, because
Halloween.
that's what happens right the day after Halloween, right?
Right, yeah, but now they're trying to get rid of it because nobody's planning on having Halloween, just trick or treating and stuff. So
they just want to kill everything that even vaguely smacks of tradition
or fun, right? Yeah. So everybody go out and get this Halloween store book, man. This looks pretty good, and this just came out, right? I mean,
it came out September 25th or something like that. And
yeah, this looks good.
I'm currently working on a Christmas horror collection, and it's going to have 10 stories in it, and I think half of them's going to be old stories and half of them's brand new stories, and I think it's really coming together great. And the artist who did the Halloween story cover is doing a cover for this one, and it is going to blow your socks off.
Probably
All right.
not going to be released this Christmas, though, right? I mean,
Yeah, it will be. Yeah, I'm working on it hard, and
wow, you must have a professional work ethic and word count and everything. Then
Well, these are most of them are reprints, though, right?
well, I mean, I
five
think there
new.
were five in the Christmas collection that's going to be reprints, but they're the Halloween versions of the stories that the editors may be changing to just regular stories,
Okay.
but Crossroad Press is very fast to work with, and
Right.
I mean, I'm gonna probably be done with it this week and get it over there to them, and they're gonna do the ebook and paperback files, and I'll go back and uh, do some corrections and stuff, and we hope to have it out right after Thanksgiving. So.
That
That must
sounds
be an
great.
awesome feeling to be able to say that you give a projection on when you're going to release it, and you can actually back it up. See, I mean, when I used to try to think I was going to publish this or that, I was basically bullshitting every time I tried to give a projection, and here I am, with all these unfinished, works,
Hey, Jeremy,
and yeah,
do you know how you fix that?
yeah, I know, work, work, do the work. Oh yeah. But that must be an awesome feeling to know that you can. I mean, like like a worksman, just like
Mm-hmm.
at your table, finishing this project or that. I mean, that must be a great feeling.
It is. I mean, when I was working writing for Zebra, I didn't have that. I mean, I didn't have any say so about when anything was coming out or how it was going to be presented. And I've kind of gotten to the point where I can kind of call the shots, and I say I want this on the cover, and that's what we're going to have on the cover.
Wow.
And you know, I'm having fun putting these little collections together, and people's really you know eating them up because. And I was selling some copies of the Halloween store, to readers, and I signed the title page and do a little artwork on the title page for them, and I've just ordered my fourth box of books because people's wanting this book so bad, and I'll probably do the same thing with the Christmas book. Um, but I mean, the Halloween stories got great reviews. Everybody, I think it was just exactly the right time to put out another Halloween collection like this.
So, how many years does this Halloween collection span as far as like the stories, right? I mean, are some of them ones you wrote in like the 80s, early 90s, some you more wrote recently?
There was two that. One of them was Blood Suede Shoes that was in Shock Rock back in 1992, I think. And,
Okay, okay,
it was originally a Halloween story, and I put the Halloween, references back in it. And I think another one is a Cemetery Dance story that was in like Cemetery Dance #3 or something like that.
okay.
But most of them are new stories, and they cover different. I mean, I've got one that's set during the 1920s.
Oh, nice.
Um, called Pretty Little Lanterns, and it's kind of it's almost novella length. I mean, it's got some length to it.
Okay.
There's a character in Timber Gray that I
Mm-hmm.
really didn't envision having any kind of redemption arc, but I really like the fact that you gave this character one, and you probably know who I'm talking about. I don't want to spoil. Excuse me, I don't want to spoil it, but
Mm-hmm.
you gave this one surprising character a good redemption arc when he's going the way of Despicable, like almost instantly when we first meet him.
Right.
I thought that was great how you gave him that, and we saw, something different instead of the inevitable slow, quick decline of this character's mental health.
Right. I mean, I've done that before in books. I mean, like in Pitfall, my second book, one of the characters who were, the antagonist was a Apache Indian, um, and there was a character, a despicable redneck character in there that just gave him a hard time at the beginning of the novel, and by the end of it, they were working together to fight this horde of Tasmanian devils that had been brought into the country and used like fighting dogs and stuff, and they got loose, and there was there was some supernatural to it. They were kind of possessed demonically, and I mean that book was like a roller coaster ride, and you look at the cover there, and it's not your typical zebra cover. It's I mean, I got the cover flat of that, and I thought, man, I've made it. Look at my name. It's half the cover is my name. You know, Looking back, I would have loved to have just a regular old cover for it. With some snarling Tasmanian devils on the cover.
Yeah, this looks like this is supposed to be not even a horror novel.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know if they were trying to, if that was their intention or not, that they were trying to make me look more mainstream, like. There was a lot of books out like that with just the name and the title and maybe a little bitty illustration on it or something to hook you and all that. But I mean, it's so good. It wasn't a really good seller, but and it's not one that people, when they think of Ron Kelly, they don't think of Pitfall. But I love that book. I mean, it is a roller coaster ride book, and I mean, it moves fast.
Yeah, I mean this almost looks like a literary novel to me as far as the marketing of the cover, right? I mean, as far as it doesn't look like even it doesn't even look like a thriller, really.
Right, and when Thunderstorm did the Essential Ronald Kelly collection, where we redid all the zebra books in hardcover. I had Alex McVeigh do a new cover, and it's a lot more, it's a lot more of a hardcover. It's like an arm sticking up out of a horde of Tasmanian devils.
Where's that cover? Pull that up, Jeremy. Let's take a look at that. That sounds great.
Now, from
you could it's the same illustration on the ebook, so you could pull that. Yeah, that's it right there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's quite a bit better. Yeah.
What are your feelings on book piracy? Because a lot of your peers, like, sort of justify it in a backwards way, because they say if the person's gonna buy my book if they like it, they're gonna buy it later if they like it when they pirate it. How do you feel?
Well, I don't get any money off pirated books, and I like to get paid for what I do, and I don't think that's a very good argument that they're going to buy it later, because I don't think they want it. They don't want to pay the money for it, and that's an easy way to get it. And
the same person who is the ringleader in justifying it is the same person that expects to be paid to do author interviews, like, say, on a podcast, or get paid for this and that, get paid for everything, But
I'm gonna say,
okay, it doesn't make any sense to me. And every time
I feel bad stealing books, but I almost have a thing in my mind where I say, if the author is dead, it's fair game, because they don't need the money.
Well, if it's like public domain, where
right,
it's free, or you can go on Kindle and get get free books or very affordable books of people whose their copyrights have lapsed, and
right, or Project Gutenberg, you can go there and get it for free if it's a public domain book.
Yeah, but I think if
like okay, for instance, I sent Jeremy some copies I was able to find of the old.
Shut up!
Okay,
they weren't Ronald Kelly's, that's for sure.
No, they weren't. I actually bought his bookstore, so I guess he technically didn't get any money anyway, even though
out of print books. They were out of print books.
Yes.
I swear.
Yeah, you bought used books. I mean, you're buying these zebra books of Ronald Kelly's. He's not getting any money out of that, right? But I mean, he still can appreciate that, right? I mean, he's gotten paid for that,
Yeah. But I see people on eBay selling my book. I saw the other day somebody had a copy of my book for $684, and that's just stupid. It's just,
are they? unless it's
I
solid.
don't think anybody paid that much for one of my books. I forgot which book it was, but
Yeah.
I think
Well,
it was Blood Kin.
you should put some of your own out there and see if you can get somebody to pay $400 for it. You should set your own eBay store up there.
Yeah, well, I don't have any of my own. I got like a set of left over for me, but
Yeah.
I used to have a lot of them, and I sold them at conventions and stuff like that. I wish I still had some.
Right.
So, have you have any like lasting relationships with people who worked in Zebra, like any editors at all, or do they all just go away?
No, I'm I pretty much cut those strings when they cut the strings when they shut down, because nobody ever. I mean, I only heard about it from my agent and all the people I'd worked with. The Zebra was just nobody.
Cut loose, right?
No, yeah, it was just like I'd never existed to them, and even when Zebra started doing a few books, I think in the mid '90s or something, some horror, and I kind of went back and said, maybe we can do some more together. They just kind of blew me off. So
Yeah, I mean, Zebra was a machine, right? I mean, it was not like a
right,
little
yeah,
boutique
no,
publishing house or something, right? I mean, it was a
no,
machine, meat grinder kind of thing.
right.
Yeah.
They were only concerned about getting the books out and making money off it. They didn't really care about the author. That's a good thing about a lot of the indie presses and specialty presses is there's people who really love the genre and they care about the authors and they respect the authors
Right.
and that's one thing I really love about writing now. But back then it was just we were indentured servants or something like that, and they wasn't paying. I mean, they pay an advance up front on the book, but I mean, you got a check every 6 months or something like that, and that was hard to make a living off of when you had to wait that long for a check.
Yeah, and you had to churn them out to get,
Right,
your strategy was to keep on writing the books. Yeah.
right.
Did you write under any pseudonyms other than the ones that you ghost wrote for those westerns?
No, that's the only ones when I started writing. See, I had um, a creative writing teacher,
Hmm.
and she said I never went to college. I just the family I grew up with. You got a high school and you put on your steel toe boots and you went to work.
Right.
Um, but she was horrified that I wasn't going to college. She said, "Well, you're never going to be a published writer if you don't go to college." And so I set out to just prove her wrong,
Good.
and
You don't need to go
and
to college at all to be a writer. I
right,
mean,
yes,
period. Right. I mean, you'd be better off not doing it.
Yeah, I would say so because
No.
all the people that like the English majors I was acquainted with in college, they either just didn't write or they were super lame for various reasons. It's like most of the people going, or I'm not going to say all, but most of them, this day and age when college is super expensive, if they're going for something like English, they're
right.
coming from some kind of money and they're not really forced to be creative, I guess. It's just, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. It's more of like, I don't know how to put it into words, but yeah, no, I've always stayed away from creative
Yeah, I
writing.
mean, all that matters is the product, whether or not it's good, right? Or whether or not it's
Right.
saleable. I mean, you don't need to have a college degree and then be $60,000+ in debt to get
Right.
permission to write a book about werewolves running around ripping people's faces off. I mean, come on.
But the reason I use my own name, my real name when I write is because when she said that, I thought, well, I'm gonna prove you wrong, and I want you when you see my name out there, you're gonna know who it is.
Did you ever
Did
send
you
her one of
did
your
you
books?
punch them?
Did you ever send her a book?
No, I kind of lost touch of some of the teachers and stuff like that. Later on, when uh, when I got on Facebook, there was a few teachers that remembered me,
Yeah,
and
Isn't
but
that the
not
story?
this one, huh?
Harlan
Isn't
Ellison
that
punched his professor who said that, didn't he?
yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, he punched him, and then after that, when he started getting published, would send them a copy of every book that he had published.
That sounds like him. Yeah.
Yeah.
How does
Yeah,
it?
and it's funny. It's funny. I had me and another guy tried to put out a Southern horror anthology back in the '90s, and it didn't get picked up. It almost got picked up by Little Brown, and but we had we had like Joe Lansdale and McCammon set up, and we invited Harlan Nelson to submit a story, and he actually wrote us back and said, if I wrote a story, I would write about why tornadoes always hit trailer parks, And I thought, yeah, come on, write that story for us, But then he ended the story by saying, well, if I did, I would need X amount of dollars and X amount of this and X amount of that. And that kind of, ended it there. But,
Yeah.
Hey, Jeremy, you told us before, but tell our guests your letter that you received from Harlan Ellison.
Boy, you want me to read it?
It's a story worth repeating. You know it is.
Harlan Ellison?
Yeah, the letter that he wrote you.
He ended it with "Get the fuck out of Tennessee." Should I read it again?
Ronald, do you want him to read it?
Yeah, if he wants to, if he can find it.
Oh, heck, he can show it to us now. He's never done the webcam before. He started doing it once I started doing it, and now I'm not doing it anymore.
Well, I say this is the first time I've done it because, that's okay.
Yeah.
I have to locate it. Keep talking.
Gregor never does it because he has a goat's head and he doesn't want to horrify our viewers.
That's exactly right.
He's got a nice ceiling fan up there, though.
And I don't do it because, right now I'm dying and they're taking me to the graveyard tomorrow. So this is my goodbye stream.
So what's wrong with you? You got some kind of illness?
Yeah, I don't know. I just woke up sick as a dog this morning.
I'm sorry to hear that.
You
feel a little better.
Rona.
What?
You probably have Rona.
Well, if I did, I would be out biting people and spitting in their faces. But no, I don't have the symptoms. I just have my head hurts and I just feel really bad.
So have you started taking the natural remedy, which is alcohol, for that?
No, I haven't been drinking, even though I probably should be.
Yeah, you should be drinking vodka, I think, is what.
Probably.
I was going to make a hot toddy earlier, but I fell asleep instead.
Oh, that's just wrong.
It's got honey in it. It's good for you.
No.
Yeah.
FYI right there stamped. He's got an FYI. He had an FYI stamp that he put. It says, Dear Mr. Maddox, this was July 9th, 2003 when he wrote it. Dear Mr. Maddox, I'm in receipt of your letter of July 7th, and clearly you have mistaken me for the Delphic Oracle. I do not hold the secrets of life, which are what you're asking me to codify for you. Is it codify or codify? It's codify, right?
So I think it's either one.
Okay.
Yeah. Sounds kind of gay.
I have a hard enough time running my own life without pretending to be a great autodidact savant proffering wisdom to young men such as yourself. But I'll give you what you want, as much of it as I possess, which ain't very. If you promise never to do this to me again, it makes me very twisty and it's creepy. 1, you listen to your high school commencement address and you bleat, "Don't I deserve some time off?" The answer is no. The universe doesn't know you're here, son, and if it did, it wouldn't give a shit. And if you're on your own, you want to rest, so go rest. And if you get up from your nap and you're 35 or 40, which is what I'm close to being now, yeah, and you've got squat to show for it, which I do, well, you're the one who felt weary. Jesus, kid, Jeezus, Jesus, kid, you are what, 20? Don't you think it's a bit premature to be wailing about ennui and the cold, stony face of life that has turned away from you? 2, stop ennobling your sophomoric bewilderment at the complexity of running your own life and just get on with it. Working in a bookstore won't do it. That is a wimp out. Bookstore is just an extension of school and the dilettante existence. Go to the North Woods and sign on for a stretch in a logging camp. You'll write, by God, G-A-W, God, and go read the Sherlock Holmes stories by Conan Doyle. All of them, because they will teach you deductive logic and how to observe, and ratiocination, all of which will prepare you to live by the big secret, which is number 3. Chance favors the prepared mind, Louis Pasteur. That's it, Maddox. That's all of it. So now I've taken time out of my life to save your life. Go the hints and make of it what you will. Jesus, Prince Michigan, why me? How do they find me? Sagely, Harlan Ellison. P.S. Get the fuck out of Tennessee.
That's classic.
Right here.
Yeah.
He had it in such a way that it was like snagged on to this right here. It was folded around like that at the bottom. So it was a separate thing, but it was like still connected. See, like that. That's like how he had it.
So how did you feel when you actually got that when you're in your 20s? I mean, how did you feel? How did it make you feel reading that at the time? Were you pissed off? Were you elated? What was
I was just glad to be able to say I got a letter from Harlan Ellison. I didn't think that we would be on the same wavelength, that his advice would open, like just like strike oil in my soul. But it felt good enough to know that I have communicated with him. What's the term for letters?
Snail mail?
No. Well, it would have sounded fancier if I'd remembered how you say
epistolary?
Correspondent. Epistolary.
Well, yeah. I mean, correspondent, I guess.
Anyway, well, okay. The moment's gone now, though. I ruined it. So, but it felt good just to know that, I had some correspondence with Harlan Ellison, which I was surprised he even responded at all.
Right. You probably pissed him off real good, and that's why he decided to write that to you.
I think Harlan liked to get opportunities like that because he could go on a little rant every now and then.
Right. He loved getting pissed off. It was like his fuel. Yeah.
Right.
It seemed like, yeah.
And he seemed to write them because to impress himself. I mean, he liked to be able to come up with some really unique stuff, and I think it amused himself that he did stuff like that.
Exactly.
I like how he's like using all these, this fancy verbiage, and then he's like, "Go read Sherlock Holmes. It'll teach you the mysteries of life." Like, what?
Oh no!
Have you read any Sherlock Holmes?
I haven't, but
it's not bad advice. Those are really good stories.
They are fantastic stories.
Yeah,
actually,
stories, but like secrets of life.
Well, no, it's talking about like deductive reasoning and shit.
It will help you. He said,
how to write a mystery.
Yeah, it would help you think in such a way that you can put things together in a story brick by brick better. And by learning how to observe human behavior.
Right, that was the key. Yeah,
Sherlock Holmes and Watson. It wasn't about really deciphering the mysteries of life, but the mysteries of minutia of life, I guess.
Right, how to be an effective observer. Right, it was partly what he was talking about.
And honestly, I tried to. At that point, I started with Hound of the Baskervilles, and I still have yet to read it. Detective stories, especially ones of the the notoriety of Sherlock Holmes, I've never been able to sink my teeth into them. The last detective story I read was one about an undead like zombie detective that's addicted to a drug in the afterlife called dust. So that gives you.
If you can't get into Sherlock Holmes, read Jim Thompson.
Okay.
Yeah, Raymond Chandler.
What did you cut your teeth on, Ronald? When
What's that?
What kind of fiction did you cut your teeth on that informed your style?
Well, I when I started reading horror, I started reading the classics. I think the first full-length horror novel I read was Dracula. I mean, that's I think I was 13 years old, and that's a daunting novel to tackle at 13. And but yeah, I loved the old Universal monster movie, so I wanted to see what they were based on, and yeah, I've read like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and all that, and then I started I started reading King, and then getting into like more um, mainstream kind of horror and stuff like that.
Did you ever read House on the Borderland by William Hope Hodgson?
No, I never read that
Oh
before.
man, you are missing out. I can't believe that was written back when it was. It's so much more imaginative than a lot of the things that came even just a few decades later. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it inspired Lovecraft even. It's a really weird work about these pig people that live underground on the estate of this guy who lives with his sister, and they're very isolated. And he finds out about these pig people that live underground, and he starts going down into their lair, or the proximity of where their lair is, and he goes on like strange vision quests based on what he sees there. It's like it takes him out of existence and shows him some weird stuff on another level of reality. It's really wild, and it's eloquently written too.
Yeah, it is good.
Mm-hmm. Sounds interesting. Now I've tried to tackle Lovecraft. I'm not a big Lovecraft fan because I just um, it's just I guess the language and everything, and
Wording, yeah.
Yeah,
it takes an acquired taste to read Lovecraft, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of
It-
dry.
It took
Yeah.
me a couple reads of Lovecraft stories before he really clicked with me.
What is it like I'm sure that you've lost several peers in your corner of literature. I mean, Jose Gonzalez a few years ago. Uh,
Yeah.
let's see, Tom Piccirilli,
Mm-hmm.
and he was in a lot of pain, when he went. And I
Jack,
mean, Jack
Yeah,
Ketchum,
Ketchum. Yeah,
that
Dallas.
that one's still fresh, unfortunately. So I mean, did you know most of these guys? I mean, what's
No, they pretty much came. Yeah, they were popular when I first came back. So I mean, I did know Brian King and a few people, but not a whole lot of the new writers when I came back in 2006.
Mm. But I mean, does it ever get you down? When like another brilliant mind is lost. I mean,
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's you know, even when some of the old writers that were around when I was around, there's a lot of them gone now. I mean, a lot of the people I went to the First World Horror Convention with, Carl Ed Wagner and Charlie Grant and Robert Bloch, they're all gone. And you look back and you think, of course I was, like I was early 30s when I went, to that, but now I'm just about to turn 61, so I feel like I'm next in line. But
well,
you
I,
know,
I thought maybe early 50s at the latest. So I did. You didn't strike me as 60, which by
no,
looking.
well, I don't feel 60, so I don't claim it right now. But
Mm-mm. Um, oh no, I think we've kept you long enough, but I do feel like there's something I'm missing that I wanted to include in the interview. I don't know. Can you guys think of anything? I'll bet I'll think of it as soon as you leave. But
you ever want to write a sequel to something out there?
not that one, but I am planning on writing a sequel to Fear. I've been toying with that, and I've got a good idea for a sequel to Fear. So
That's the one with the cartoon on the cover, correct?
yes,
Okay,
and
I have that one.
um, I'm probably gonna be tackling that in 2021. So
Yeah, it's just so weird though. Like me, when I'm building up the zebra novels and what they are in my mind, like I just have like a picture of like it's freaking fall and people are actually reading them. I've got a feeling it was a lot less glamorous And like, did you ever walk into a bookstore and just like look at your books on the racks, or did that never happen?
Yeah, I would go to the bookstores, and a lot of times, there was a lot of bookstores that didn't carry zebra books. I mean, they carried Tor but Dale Abyss and all that, but
I always thought
I
it would
mean,
be the other way around. I mean, I know those publishers were bigger, but for some reason, I imagined Zebra being everywhere just because they're like a.
well, a lot of the bookstores, they were literary snobs. I mean, they kind of looked down at zebra books and all that, and
But every one of them carries
Yeah.
Tor Fantasy. See,
yeah,
Yeah, Zebra.
Tor and Dale Abyss were the big. I mean, I remember going to the First World Horror Convention, and there was all the big mass market published authors were sitting in the chairs, and all of us zebra book authors were standing against the back wall, at opening ceremonies.
Yeah, Zebra struck me as the kind of thing you would like mostly see in like grocery stores and such.
Yeah, they focused on that more than
the B. Dalton I went to always carried the zebra books. Yeah, they had a massive wall of them.
Wait, the what?
B. Dalton was the chain.
Was that like a chain that was everywhere, or just up there in Ohio or Chicago?
Yeah, that was a big one.
Yeah,
we
it
had
was
some
a big
B.
one.
Daltons down our way too.
I'm pretty sure they shut down like in like I don't know, the early 2000s.
but
remember.
Bookland. I remember
yeah.
Bookland. Who remembers Bookland?
I don't know that I've ever been to a Bookland.
For some reason, their selections were always so much more wide and sprawling than like B. Dalton or Walden Books or Books A Million. Even Books A Million, I thought Bookland just had a richer selection.
Yeah, I remember Bookland, and I did have books there. The funny thing is when I would go, I would go to the book section, the horror sections, and bookstores did have horror sections back then, and there would be somebody, and people would be almost expressly focused on Stephen King, and I'd say, and being in the alphabet, I was right next to Stephen King all the time, so alphabetically, and I would say that's my
yeah.
yeah. Well, you'd think so, but I would say that's my book right there, and they'd look at me like I was, you're an idiot, like sure you are,
Right.
But,
books have authors, yeah, right.
well, they didn't expect one to be standing there next to them, I guess, but
right.
Yeah,
They probably thought you're lying.
But I mean,
like, oh, if you why are you here? Why you're not rich?
right. But that's kind of everybody it still goes on. Everybody's focused on King and
Yep.
and don't rarely look at other authors, and I hate to say this, but there's some authors that can write better than King, and they're just not getting the attention that I think McCammon is just as good as King myself.
Yeah, McCammon's pretty cool. The thing about McCammon is I get the feeling he's like a genuine artist, whereas a lot of the writers, I mean, you could maybe put King in that category. It feels like they just go on autopilot, whereas when McCammon talks about his books, he's more moody about it. It's not that more interesting. Whereas King will be like, yeah, I had a bunch, smoked a bunch of crack and then wrote this, and I don't even this is too much to talk about in this discussion, but on my other podcast, we talked about all the things that, like the kind of negative philosophical undercurrents that you'll see in King's work that, maybe more was going on, but I don't need to go to that in this podcast.
Well, I think that was a well-rounded discussion, and I appreciate you giving us the time, Ronald.
Thank you.
It's been fun.
And I look forward to reading Flesh Welder.
Okay.
It does look awesome. I didn't even know about that until tonight. So, yeah, I'm going to check that out, too. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I wish I could have hopped on sooner.
And he has a Christmas anthology coming up
yeah.
this holiday season. So
it's called it's called Seasons Creepings.
Good.
Tales of holiday horrors. So yeah, just keep watch on social media, and I'm gonna be promoting that and showing the cover off.
Very
Hey,
good.
one more thing then. Since you're getting into that Christmas horror spirit, what would you say was the better movie, Christmas Evil or Silent Night, Deadly Night?
Well, I've never seen either one of them, so I can tell you that. But because I when it got to all the slasher movies, I mean, I watched the original Halloween and maybe Halloween 2, but I just never could get into the slasher movies and stuff back then. But I mostly went to like Carpenter's The Thing and movies like that when I was watching horror in the theater.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. Well, thank you very much, Ronald. And wow, it's great to know that a horror veteran lurks just 6 hours away from where I'm sitting now. That's great.
Yeah.
There's a lot more authors from here than I'm beginning to realize. There's a lot of horror authors that are active and from around here that I just never really considered.
Yeah, I'm finding that out myself. I didn't know there was so many in Tennessee and around Tennessee, but it's good. I mean, I'm glad about it.
Well, thank you, sir. Look forward to your
Thank you.
collection.
Thank you.
You have a good evening.
You too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know how to close it out?
You can just close the window that it's in. Yeah, there we go.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, it was a fun
yeah.
little discussion.
That was our first guest
I'll
in
have to
weeks.
I'll have to listen to the rest of it later.
That was our first guest in several weeks. Damn, Simpsons Treehouse of Horror got preempted, so I ended up.
You sure it was supposed to be tonight and not next week?
I may have gotten the date wrong. Yeah, I hope so. Doesn't seem to make that doesn't make much sense that baseball would preempt. Okay, it says right here 4 hours ago, Simpsons episode delayed until November.
Ha!
Oh,
What?
That's them going, screw you.
that's dumb.
It's not Halloween anymore in November. What do you mean November?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like it would be next week, right? I mean, they're probably going to play it on November 1st, which would be stupid.
It's not fair.
I mean, Simpsons has been a zombie for years now, but you'd think that they would at least, do the House of Horror, do the Treehouse of Horror in fucking October.
It's like the only thing that anybody cares about, right? I mean,
Postponed is due to Game 7 of the National League Championship Series. Baseball can suck my razor wire laden dick.
yeah, I'd watch that.
Yeah.
Baseball is pretty lame. All sports are lame, though.
I understand why people like them. I just don't care about them.
You can show a horror Halloween special in November. That's brilliant, guys. It's not even the first time we've done it.
Yeah, who watches baseball in October? It's supposed to be the only one.
Man.
Why are we even having baseball? This shouldn't be because of the coof.
No, we shouldn't have baseball at all.